Let me just start with Alexa.
Sure. Thanks, Professor Bockenheimer. So my name is Alexa McKenna. I graduated in the class of 2017. I was an entrepreneurship major, so it wasn't too long ago that I was kind of sitting where all of you were, listening to these great panel events that Professor Bockenheimer does for the students. And I think the main thing as far as getting from graduation to your first job, that's kind of what I feel like a lot of you are going to want and have questions about. So that's kind of what I'll be talking about later in the questions. But I am a consultant at Deloitte. I've been at the firm now for a little bit over a year. And as Bruce mentioned, so I do a lot of projects around artificial intelligence and machine learning in terms of automating processes for various banks. So particularly in banking and capital markets industries, it's a paper-heavy business. So how can we get clients of ours to make that process as smooth as possible? And it's through these different automation technologies that are very up and coming. And I think just in the industry as a whole in machine learning, and artificial intelligence is going to be really big in the next 3 to 5 years. So I've had an incredible experience just working with various clients at Deloitte. And I'll pass it over, I guess, to Jenny to do intros for her.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Bruce. I'm Jenny Watzka. I'm originally from Germany. I'm what people call a digital nomad, so I travel the world full time. I gave up on my apartment and everything. I run an online business. It's been so great to see that coming from corporate world, where everything is very structured, to being my own boss and literally having 24 hours in a day to myself and to whatever I want to work on. I just arrived from Vietnam, and it's been amazing to see that I can take my 6-figure business online, travel the world, and do the work that I wanted to do that I was not able to do in the corporate world. So I did not start there. I did start not at Deloitte, but at KPMG and Ernst & Young. And similar to Alexa, I graduated from the best European universities. And I had this big dream of like climbing the corporate ladder and like working my way up. And I was looking to, get the next pay raise and get the next bonus, until I realized that no longer fulfills me. So how can I take the skills and everything that I learned into what do I really want to do? And that's when I asked myself the question, like, what does my dream life look like? And apparently it did not look like working in a cubicle, but it did look like working at the beach or whatever it was that I'm doing now. And now I get the chance to help other entrepreneurs grow their business, scale their business, and see others live the dream life that I once dreamt about that I'm now living.
Hey everybody, my name is Sam Bobley. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Acrolis. We are a human-in-the-loop technology company that automates the analysis of financial documents with perfect accuracy. Short story of how I got from here to there. Started the company just days after graduating from University of South Carolina. Started at my parents' kitchen table with a buddy of mine from high school. We had an idea and set out to build an MVP version of this product. Really scrappy getting started. Put out an initial version of this product. It generated enough interest that we were able to raise some money from friends and family. Shortly after that, we picked up more momentum. We were able to move from my kitchen table to an office on Long Island, continued to grow the business and move into the city, where we were able to attract software engineers and more talent. Thereafter, I met up with Bruce, who actually made an investment in my company as part of the Westchester Angels. We moved from the friends and family sphere up to the angel investing sphere, and we closed a round that consisted of the Westchester Angels, the Archangel Fund, the Harvard Business School Alumni Angels, and a few other angel investors. At this point, we were in our first office on Wall Street, just a few blocks away from here. That was in 2017. The product continued to grow quite rapidly, and we were able to parlay that momentum into closing an institutional venture capital round earlier this year. In total, we've now raised about $10 million, and just a couple months ago, we moved from our Wall Street office to an office about 2.5 times the size of that on Exchange Place. So excited to share insights on the 4.5-year journey from my kitchen table to where we are today, and where we hope to take the company moving forward.
Thank you, Sam. So to continue what Sam mentioned, I knew the people that started Westchester Angels. I also teach on our Pleasantville campus up in Westchester. And I just went to it hoping to meet guest speakers for classes, panelists like tonight, judges for the pitch contest, a keynote speaker. And when I saw Sam's company present and went into the due diligence meetings and was so impressed, I decided to invest. And yesterday I got my stock certificate. So it was great. And just I told Sam, one thing that's great is I worked in the venture capital area before for IQ Venture Partners. And so often you see what's called a hockey stick projection. Yes, we're only doing this, but as soon as we get your money, it goes straight up like a hockey stick. And you never expect that to happen. And, after the round closes, you expect a lot of excuses and problems and challenges and all that. And I've got to say, when I get the monthly or quarterly investor updates, the cost of processing transaction goes down faster than they expected. The revenue has gone up faster than projected, so it's an investor's dream. But let me ask you, Sam, going from there, in getting from the kitchen table to this, venture-backed company that raised, $10 million, processes, millions of transactions for customers around the world. Can you talk about some of the unexpected challenges from getting from here to there, and how did you deal with them?
Yeah, I think persistence is the number one thing that I'd like to share with you guys as something to focus on. Startups are risky by nature. There are tons of ups and downs, unexpected twists and turns. Forgetting the business aspect of it for a second, just personalities is super difficult. Dealing with a co-founder at the starting point can be relatively straightforward. As you continue to build the business, more and more personalities are coming into the business, and that's just such a significant element of managing the ups and downs, particularly as you get bigger. Everybody wants to be in a leadership position. Everybody wants to have direct reports under them, and it's difficult to have guys that have been on the team for 3-4 years. Finally, you get to a point where you've raised a lot of money, you can attract senior talent, and now you have to explain to the guys who have been with you 4 years, hey, you have a new boss, right? So I think that managing personalities is one of the most difficult parts, and one of the parts about entrepreneurship that isn't really touched on as much in traditional business school type classes. And then, again, going back to the persistence element, there are going to be problems. There are going to be, tons of issues and fires that you need to keep putting out left and right. But if you believe in your idea and you keep grinding on it, eventually you'll see the light. And once you see the light, you kind of turn a corner. So the last just closing thought on this is raising money is really challenging. You need money to keep the lights on, and you need to keep going out to investors. And frankly, it's horrible asking people for money, right? You don't want to ask your friends and family for money. You feel bad that if you take their money, you might not be able to pay them back. And then you get into this territory with angel investors where you're out there, sending your pitch deck to dozens or even hundreds of different angel groups, hoping that someone takes a bite and someone wants to look at it. Finally, you get over the hump of raising some money from angel investors, and you go out to VCs, and it's even harder, right? VCs will look at thousands and thousands of companies a year, and they'll invest in a handful. You'd be lucky enough to even get a meeting, let alone get an investment. But if you keep with your perseverance, eventually there's a shift in that, right? So where I am today, when I met Bruce, I was unbelievably thankful that the Westchester Angels would even take a look at my company. Where I am today, I literally have dozens of growth investors, VCs in my inbox that I push off every day. And I tell them, hey, I'm not interested in having a conversation. You want to write me a big check? That's nice. Let's talk again in 6 to 9 months. So it's a lot like dating in some regards. And for a long time, you're not hot. And then the second that you are hot, the dynamic changes, and you just have to grind to get to that power shift moment.
Good, and I just want to pick up on one thing just before I go to Jenny. You mentioned attracting talent. One other thing that was great that I read from the updates, and this is the first time I got a chance to talk to Sam since investing, is the surprise, like the people that were brought on, top universities, great background. One of the hardest things for a startup is attracting, recruiting, motivating and maintaining talent, and I think every successful entrepreneur will say, hire the best people, hire people smarter than me. How did you find, attract, recruit, and motivate that level of talent?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very tough. For starters, you have to be able to perform every function of the business yourself before you can hire for that function, right? If you can't do it yourself and you can't explain to the person in detail what they're going to be doing and why it will lead to upside opportunity, you're going to be at a disadvantage in the hiring game. It's extremely challenging, especially in the early stages. In the early stages, what I did was I hired young people who are easier to recruit. Kids right out of college. For example, my first sales guy was a political science major, and we had him selling, an AI solution to financial services. It was a big learning curve, but we made the investment in someone who we thought was a smart kid who could kind of adapt to a new environment. And in the last year, he just closed $750K in revenue. So the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. As you get larger, you get in a position where you can battle for top talent. Most recently, we hired a head of growth who got an MBA from University of Chicago. He was formerly the director of business development at Common Bond, which is a large-scale online lender here in New York City. We also hired a head of product who got an MBA from Harvard, engineering degree from Stanford. He was head of global mobile product at Thomson Reuters, overseeing a team of 60 product managers. And again, it's really kind of the inflection point that I mentioned, right? Once you get over the hump and people feel that you're really on a rocket ship, they naturally gravitate to you. But the other thing I'll add is the competition increases. So before I hired the guy who was our head of growth, I was trying to hire someone else for the position, and he was a fantastic candidate. He formerly was head of business development at Orchard Platform, if anyone knows what that is. It's a startup that was valued at $100 million. And we had the deal done. We had an offer sheet signed. Like, this had been an exhaustive search, super time consuming. And I got a call and he told me, hey, sorry, I know I signed the sheet already, but Facebook just came in and made me an offer that I can't refuse, and it's my dream job. So, I'm out here now trying to compete against Facebook. Literally the otother day, we just had Google poach an engineer from us. Like, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and you got to sell hard on the opportunity. And the last thing here is really what's going to get people into a startup versus a Facebook or a Google is the upside opportunity, right? You want to align incentives with your workers, and giving them that equity component is what's going to give you the kicker. You can't compete with Facebook or Google on base salary. What you have to sell them on is the vision and explaining to them, hey, if you come in now, look at what the business is going to be like in 24 months. Like, this is going to blow out of the water what you could do at Google, and it's going to unlock those opportunities. Google will always be there, right? If you have a certain resume, those big job opportunities are always going to be there. A startup is a risky opportunity where if you hit it right, it can pay off tremendously in the long run.
Great, thanks, Sam. So Jenny, on the getting from here to there theme, you're at some major consultants, and now this digital nomad, a word I love. Are you guys familiar with this digital nomad? When you have that coding skill in your laptop, you could be anywhere in the world. Can you talk a little bit about getting from here to there? You talked about your passion of wanting to do that, but there's a lot to beyond the safety of a big firm. You've got someone handling payroll and travel and health insurance and all that. Can you talk a little how you actually went out and took that leap? And I'd love to hear a little bit about the digital nomad lifestyle. And you actually don't have a fixed home base.
Yeah, okay, so exactly, I don't have a home base. I literally only have a suitcase and a backpack. That's all I have, and I'm really proud that I made the move. So let me start there. I always wanted to be at a big consulting firm. I worked in mergers and acquisitions. I always wanted to have this fast-paced life and the traveling from client to client. It was exactly what I wanted since I started my first degree. Until I realized I no longer want this. It's great that I worked for this for the last, 6, 7, 8 years, but now it's no longer what I want. And actually making this realization, having this realization, and then taking the leap was really hard, because how do you explain to your parents that paid for all of your tuition and whatever that, well, great, now I have exactly what I wanted, I no longer want this? How do you explain to your coworkers that think you are the most driven coworker they have that it actually sucks and you don't want to do it anymore. How do you go from being super controlled, having literally every day in your life controlled by work, to having immense and full freedom? And I think for me, the pain of staying was bigger than the motivation to leave. And seeing what is possible, like immersing myself in this digital nomad world and into this whole entrepreneurial world, just made me realize what is possible. And I went back to my parents, who always told me, when I was little, when I was literally 3, 4, 5, they told me, oh my God, Jenny, you're going to live an extraordinary life. I don't know where that idea came from, but I realized I want this extraordinary life, and I'm not getting it by doing the things that everyone does, namely staying even though you feel called to leave. And then I left, and it was hard because literally everyone was against it, because I knew that I learned so much, but everyone else thought, well, you're only 27, why would you do that now? You're not even like in a very leading position yet, why don't you stay a couple of years? And I decided, no, now is the time, because, and that's the biggest thing for everyone who's thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, there will never be the perfect moment. It's like when you have kids, you'll never have the perfect day where you're like, yep, today's the day. That will never happen, and you'll always have to leave your comfort zone heavily if you want to start something new, if you want to go against the majority of what other people do. And yeah, so that's when I made the leap, and I'm never ever going back. Even though I sold to my mom, like I sold this whole idea to my mom, being like, Mom, it's a 1-year experiment, so they'll keep my position open for a year. I can always go back. It's not been a year, but I'm definitely not going back.
Okay, and just give us a little insight on what that nomadic life. I mean, I did a nomadic life. I lived on a sailboat for 5 years, and that was because I was working on Wall Street, making great money, but it just wasn't fun anymore, and I just left and went sailing. What is just a little insight on that nomadic life? Just a day in the life, or a week in the life of a nomad.
I mean, a lot of people are interested in that. A lot of people are really into this digital nomad lifestyle. I personally don't even like this term so much, but basically what happens is there are a lot of entrepreneurs who basically almost all of them run their own online business. Some of them work remotely for other companies. And basically all over the world, we have those entrepreneurial hubs. For example, I was just in Bali for a month. There's a big entrepreneurial hub, or in Medellin, Colombia, or Chiang Mai, China. Around the world, we have those groups of entrepreneurs finding their way into this new lifestyle that maybe this movement started like 5 years ago or something. And now basically we all work from co-working spaces where we inspire each other, where we host workshops together, where we find opportunities to grow together, to work together. And yeah, basically, I mean, my everyday life is pretty boring because I just wake up and decide, well, what am I going to do today? I have very few booked appointments in a day, so I'm free to do whatever. Mostly I start my day by being at the beach for a long time, and then I'll work in the afternoon. And I literally just love that I can go to the office, like the co-working space, if I want to. I don't have to, but I know that if I go, I'll meet this whole new community of friends and of like-minded people, and that has been the best thing for me to see, that there's so many other people out there living their dream. And now I no longer feel like a stranger or like the crazy person that I used to feel like, because now I see so many other people are doing it and are living their dream lives.
Okay, thank you. And there's a book I used in one of the classes called The Delayed Life Plan, and the whole idea was you can't wait for that perfect time, because it won't be. You wind up getting married, having kids, buying a house. Now you built a career, I can't leave. And I'm sure you're familiar with Steve Jobs, his commencement address at Stanford, talking about, whenever I've looked in the mirror too many days and didn't like what I was doing, I knew it was time to change. And again, I left a great job on Wall Street doing some exciting stuff to go sailing. So it's still early in your career, but find what you love, because that's the only way to do great work.
Can I just add to this?
Please.
Literally all of my clients, they find all the excuses as to why they might not be able to make this big move yet, whatever their move is, be it hiring people or outsourcing tasks or whatever. They find all those excuses. And it's funny because I've heard them all. I've heard, I'm too young, I'm too old, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money. But we can always come up with excuses. The brave ones are the ones that do it anyways. And it's a decision that you make within you, and it's a decision that you always have to come back to, because just like Sam said, there are huge ups and downs in this entrepreneurial journey, and only if you're really sure as to why you're in it can you actually survive it.
And there's a correction. The concept is the delayed life plan. The book is called The Monk and the Riddle by Randy Komisar. Great. And Alexa, talk about, PACE, while you're in a consulting job, doing some really neat stuff. And I know you were in another area, I think financial services before. Talk about what that's like, going from, if you want to call it the security of, regular classes and things, to this consulting, which, was always been a lot of, pressure. You're working with major clients, with some really bright people. What is that like? Were you kind of thrown in the deep end, mentored? How is it, going to your first presentation, getting literally from here, Pace University, to there, a major consulting firm doing some cutting edge work with some major clients?
Sure, I'll talk a little bit about that. So I think, so Pace University prepared me really well for as far as sort of like the more softer skills, presentation skills. And what's funny, I'll tell a quick story of how I actually ended up getting my job. So I got my job because I was through networking at the time. So someone actually came to Pace from Deloitte who was looking for someone with technical abilities, so coding, and I have no technical abilities in coding. I don't know a single coding language. But he said, I think you're really bright, like what skills can you offer? And so I said, I have really good marketing, I can do market research, I can do great presentation, I think it'd be great with client representation as well. So I said, here are my skills, like where do you think I would best fit? And he's like, I like what you're doing, I can see the vision. Then that's how I ended up getting sort of my first interview and trailing along down the path to getting my job at Deloitte. So that's kind of just one way that you can kind of use what you learn to your advantage when actually job hunting or when actually talking to recruiters. And then going back to the point of as far as like how did I then use my skills that I learned in class then in sort of this consulting world. So I remember being on my first phone call, like with it was a major bank. I had never been on a phone call like this before. And it was also an international phone call. So they were a bunch of European people, and they were like talking in accents. And I was like, what is going on here? I don't know if I can do this. But I think what helped me prepare for that moment is really thinking back to when I was like either taking an exam or doing a presentation. There's always that moment, like I feel like right before I would do it, where it's like, oh, I don't know anything. But then as you're going through, you kind of build your confidence. So like ask one question and I'm confident and I answer it. And then that kind of builds my confidence throughout it. And now it's to the point where, I'm confident about the products that I'm selling and the services that I can provide. So it's gotten to a point now where it's just like I sort of know the questions that they're going to ask and how to respond to them. So it went from this sort of in the classroom where you're sort of like memorizing things and you're learning how to present, to now anticipating those client questions and anticipating sort of what's going to go on in those meetings. Another thing that I sort of used from my time at Pace that I use now in my full-time job is really my time management. So I was involved in a lot of extracurriculars at Pace, and with consulting, your schedule's kind of all over the place and usually kind of have to adapt to the client schedule. So just kind of going from, my class schedules and like organizing all of my time there to then now organizing it as a consultant, because you do sort of run your own schedule, even though you're part of a larger firm. So that time management skill is something that has carried over with me as well.
And taking those extracurriculars that Alexa mentioned, Pace's motto is opportunitas, or opportunity. I believe there's nothing more synonymous with entrepreneurship than opportunity. But just to highlight on taking advantage of some of those extracurricular opportunities, I used to joke that the E-Lab was the bank of Alexa, because like every competition, every contest, every scholarship we offered, Alexa was there and winning most, if not all of them. So take advantage of those opportunities. With the career, I had as I said, not a typical academic career. I started out, as I mentioned, on Wall Street after 8 years of trading. I remember my second day out of Pace, I did trade for over $1 billion. took off and went sailing. I sailed down to South America, lived on the boat for 5 or 6 years. I started a woodworking company in Annapolis Maritime Corp. Wound up getting recruited by a government contractor to do a forensic firearms identification system and counterterrorism in like 24 countries around the world. That contract came to an end. I got a scholarship from McKinsey to do a graduate degree in Australia. That was during the dot-com days. I started a company over there called Stock Central that within a couple months we were offered over $1 million for. I came back here, worked for a VC for a little while, and then wound up at Pace. So Steve Jobs, in that commencement address that I mentioned at Stanford, he says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. So going with Sam, what kind of advice might you give to students for, they can't see what their career is going to look like, but what kind of things might they do so those dots have a nice chance of lining up to something that will be a rewarding professional career?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I saw a TED Talk pretty recently, which really resonated with me, and I think is super relevant to this. It was basically the speaker was a woman who was attending Harvard, and she was like top in her class, one of these super smart people who's always doing the extracurricular activities, so forth. And she was in a near tragic accident. She was in a dramatic car accident that altered her brain function and quite literally reduced her IQ. And the doctors told her something along the lines of, you're never going to be able to perform at the same cerebral level that you used to. She persevered, and she continued to attend her courses and participate in Harvard, despite the advice of the doctor that that might be too intimidating of an environment for her to be in. And the message that she shared was, fake it until you become it. She basically said that she sat in the class and faked it and pretend that she understood what was going on, and when she was asked a question, she answered confidently and acted like she owned the place. And over time, she started actually, picking back up the knowledge and really feeling ownership over the answers. When I heard that, it really resonated with me. A lot of my last couple of years I've spent, especially prior to closing the VC round, I was out pitching venture capitalists. Almost all of them have Ivy League degrees. It's a super intimidating environment. They're going to ask you a million questions about, the inner workings of technology, operations, market effects, total addressable market, a million different things that you have to prep on. And what I did was I faked it until I became it, right? So I went in there and I acted confident and I acted like I knew the answers, and sometimes I did and sometimes I didn't. And then over time, after I took enough of these meetings, I really was able to grasp the material. And now when I walk in a room with a VC, I feel like I can command the conversation. So that's one piece of advice that I think kind of applies to many different facets of entrepreneurship and life in general. You're going to be put in unknown territory. It's going to be intimidating. You're going to be in that situation like Alexa described where, you think you forgot everything and a test is coming up or a presentation's coming up. And it's really about how you carry yourself and how you present yourself. And what you'll find at the end of the day is people don't know quite as much as you think they know, right? Like, especially when you're talking about something that, is inherent to you. Like if you're talking about your own business or your own idea, you know more about that business or your idea than anyone else does. So even if you're in a room with a Harvard professor who's, quizzing you and asking you a million questions and acting like he knows everything, if you have the confidence that, hey, this is my idea, I want to own it, and I'm going to go out there, it makes all the difference in the world.
Thanks. You guys are familiar with the Khan Academy. Sal Khan put up like 4,000 videos on every topic you can imagine. He spoke at the pitch contest a couple years ago when I was on the MIT Enterprise Forum board. One of the fellow board members was his roommate at MIT, and fortunately was able to get him to come and speak. And one of the questions I asked him was, you earned 3 degrees from MIT in, I think, 5 years, and then afterwards you did an MBA at Harvard. Like, why the MBA? And he said, well, part of the reason, not exactly fake it till you make it, because if I'm going to be doing all these things, I really want to sound like I know what I'm talking about and have that credential, to be able to say that. And, we have just a a quick, it's like a joke. There was a story that when Einstein came over from Germany, met someone on the boat, and they became friends. And the guy was a driver, and he would drive Einstein. He gave him a drive him up and down the East Coast. From Princeton up to Harvard, over to Yale, down to Wharton. And the driver said to him, I've listened to so many of your talks. I bet I could give one. And they said, all right, well, we're at the next university. You give the talk. And the driver gives the talk, and he answers all the questions. And then he gets a question that stumps him. And he said, oh, that question is so simple, even my driver could answer it, and points to Einstein. So that idea of, you can pick up a lot of knowledge, and not just through formal education.
Can I add one more thing
Please.
just on this topic? So I think this will resonate with a lot of the students. So I feel like when you go in for these job interviews and you're trying to get your first job, it's like you always feel like, oh, I don't know enough to be in this position, but people are hiring you based on your ability to learn, and they're hiring you for your skills other than just the rote memorization or rote facts of finance or whatever industry you're going into. For example, I didn't know anything about machine learning or artificial intelligence or robotics or any of these technologies that I work with now, but they knew that I would be capable of learning about these technologies and then also dealing with clients and presenting to them and trying to get them to see the vision of what we can provide and what services we can provide to help their companies grow as well. So don't be intimidated by the fact that, oh, I don't know everything there is to know about finance, or I don't know everything there is to know about marketing, because recruiters, and when you go into those job interviews, they kind of already know that you may not know everything, so they're hiring you on your ability to learn, your capabilities other than just what that role might specifically say or what that title might specifically say for that company.
And just to add one more thing on that, I think the point and the essence of what I was saying is really about the confidence. I'm not at all suggesting to go out and lie or embellish or truly fake answers. It's about the mentality of when you're in a room and the ownership over the material that you are presenting. If someone asks you a question that you genuinely don't know, you have to be honest, right? Honesty goes a long way, and a huge skill set in entrepreneurship is being able to just say to someone, I don't know the answer to that question, or I have to go back and research that question and let me get back to you. But when you do answer a question, take full ownership over it, and you gotta just project the confidence to your audience, and that's really the essence of faking it till you become it.
Yeah, no, and I think that's an important definition, an important clarification. It's not making things up. It's that confidence and the mindset and the way you present yourself. And a generation ago, when I was here, the way you would get information is from encyclopedia or a card catalog, and it was important to have all that rote memorization, have all that information, in your fingertips. But now with, Google and the internet, it's not about the content, it's about the creative part or the creativity or being able to solve a problem or do something with it. Jenny, on that theme, again, of you can't connect the dots looking forward, but what advice might you give for how do you position yourself so that those dots maybe give you the most opportunity going forward when you're not sure what you want to do or what your career might look like in 10 years?
Right. First of all, we don't know. I did not know that I was going to quit the job that I loved 4 years ago. So go for whatever you feel like you want to achieve now, thinking about what you think you will want to do in the future. Don't stay away from awesome opportunities. Don't stay away from things that scare you a lot maybe, because those might be the things that challenge you the most. You can always go back and go the safe way. There's always this opportunity also, like you said, that you can always go back to the bigger careers or whatever you want. But why not do something that scares you? And right now, what I do in my business and what I want my clients to do is every week I'll ask myself, what is my biggest fear right now? And then I'll run towards it. Just because I know that growth will never lie within my comfort zone, but always outside of it. So don't overcomplicate things, because you will just don't know what you'll want to do in 10 years, but go for whatever you feel right now would be a great move, a great first step, and then focus. Really focus. I feel like with a lot of people who are in this entrepreneurial world, they'll have 1,000 and 1,000,000 ideas. And that's great. I have so many ideas too, but right now I know that I'll need to focus in order to grow, because where focus growth where focus is, growth is, and that's where what you want to do, be it in your own career or when you start your own business. You always want to make sure that you know what your next steps are and that you're focused on those instead of thinking about every single piece that you might need 10 years from now. And really don't overcomplicate it, but also really truly ask yourself what would be exciting for you right now and what would scare you right now, even if it was just a little bit, and get out of your comfort zone. And also, if anyone is here who is thinking about starting their own business, but they're unsure, they have ideas, feel free afterwards to pitch them to me. I'm happy to brainstorm any ideas you have, no matter whether you're at the beginning stage or wherever you are at. Because I know that so many entrepreneurs, they have so many ideas within them, but they don't know whom to talk to, or oh, I don't think I'm good enough, or I don't think my idea is developed enough. Go ahead and start this discussion, because only then will you be able to get ideas and grow from that.
Yeah. Alexa, you've only been out for a year and a half. Thinking back, although it's not that long, are there other kind of skills or preparation or courses or activities you think might have been helpful, although you've done so many that people in the audience might think about doing?
Sure. So I'd say some of the most helpful things that I did at PACE were actually with the eLab. So presenting at the pitch competition, doing the hackathons, just because you learn these skills of working with people. There's somewhat of a pressure situation where it is a competition, so there's some stakes involved. And then as well as it's just perfecting the skill of presenting and selling, because majority of the time it's you're either selling yourself, you're selling a product, or you're selling an idea to someone. And that's kind of the majority of entrepreneurs. That's kind of their bread and butter, is the ability to sell their idea, to gain people to work at their company, to gain VC money, to gain press, whatever it may be. So I would say the thing that I wish I would have done, and it's not even so much related to coursework or anything, but I wish I would have just gone on more interviews in my job search. So I think I started about in January of my senior year on the job search, and I think just doing the interviews and just building my confidence as far as selling my skill set to employers as well could have been perfected more at that time period. So my advice to everyone is just to kind of start early as far as the job hunting process. Get your resume together at the beginning of your senior year. PACE has a lot of great resources as well, and counselors that are willing to help you look over your resume, because then once you have that and you have your 30-second pitch down that you're going to talk to a recruiter about, it's really easy, and it kind of takes the edge off of the nervousness that you might sometimes feel when interviewing. So that's something that I wish I would have done more of. Looking back on it, is just kind of starting that job hunt earlier, sooner rather than later.
Yeah. One thing I'd add to that is, and I think Alexa made some great points. The key is optionality, right? You want to have options. When you're doing anything in life, particularly going out to get a job, you need to have leverage in the situation to get where you want to go, right? So when I'm interviewing people, and I spend about 33% of my time interviewing people, I've probably sat with 100 plus candidates over the last 6 months. It's very clear who has other offers on the table and who's desperate for the job, right? And for the desperate people for the job, A, most likely they get the boot and I don't even talk to them again. B, if they are interesting enough to talk to, they have no leverage whatsoever and they get undervalued. They get less salary, they get less equity, they get less incentive structure upside, versus the guy who I know has 3 or 4 other offers, whether they're real or not, he's playing it up like he does have those offers. He has optionality, he's creating that feeling of scarcity. That's when I really want to zone in and I'm like, hey, come meet me for drinks, come meet me for dinner. I want to wine and dine you. I want to show you why this is such a big upside. And inevitably what happens is the offer trickles up, right? So the more that you can have optionality in life, the more you'll be in the driver's seat. And it really starts with what Alexa's talking about, going out there and getting FaceTime. The more people you get FaceTime with, the more likely you're going to get a few bites and you can play them off each other to get your desired end result.
Plus, pitching yourself and getting yourself out there, it's a muscle that you can train. The more you do it, the bigger this muscle, your confidence gets. And yeah, don't start with the companies you would really, really love to work for. Start a little bit smaller and build yourself up. Because once you go to those big companies, you know what your selling points are and you know how to communicate in a way that really gets those people into wanting to hire you.
Yeah, and then just to kind of close this out, this topic of like jobs. So then once you actually have these offers, so I was someone that had multiple offers. I didn't necessarily take the offer with the highest salary or like the, the most employee benefits. I took the offer that I knew had the most opportunity for me to grow and for people to learn with. So at my job now, I work directly under a senior manager, which is super valuable. And I've learned a lot through a mentorship with him. And I've grown a lot just in my skills as being a businesswoman as well. So always kind of consider not just like the dollar amount that comes with that job, but like how that job will, one, set you up for future opportunities, what you'll learn and the skills that you'll gain from that. And you'll probably be much happier because as Bruce and as Jenny have stated, like, they gave up their like good paying jobs because like it wasn't fulfilling to them and they saw opportunities elsewhere. So it's not so much about the dollar sign on that contract as it is what are you going to gain from this experience of employment at this company, and also what you can provide for them and how you'll excel.
Good, and there was a couple words I think are really important. Jenny talked about passion, and Sam about that persistence. And I think the main way that an entrepreneur has that persistence to keep fighting is because they're passionate about what they're doing. And, when I was bored with something and I found the passion, whether in sailing or any of the other things, or teaching, when I found that, I was able to put my whole energy towards it. But there was times that you don't know what your passion is, and I found, at least in my case, that often you find your passion when you're in the right place at the wrong time. Kind of opposite that song. I must have. What did he say? I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. A lot of times I think you find your passion by being at that right place at the wrong time. You didn't intend, plan for that to happen, but it did. So can you talk about, were there occasions that you found, this is for everyone, found a passion and went for that, and how did that occur, and what do you do to keep your radar on and keep moving forward when you're just not that passionate about something, that stage when you weren't that passionate about what you're doing, you knew if you found that passion you would do it. How do you set yourself up to option out, find options, find circumstances, be at the right place at the wrong time, and then go after that passion?
Sure. I think it's really about the light at the end of the tunnel mentality, right? So quick analogy from my business. We have a back-end system that requires data verification. Basically what that means is when a document comes into our system, we read whatever we can with our machines, and then there's a human element of verifying the actual data to make sure that the machine read was correct. When we first launched this product, particularly the beta version of the product before we had any customers, I was quite literally doing the verification myself. It's the most boring job in the entire world. I joke now that it's therapeutic, but that's just my way of kind of downplaying it. But you're quite literally just like keying in data into like a form for hours at a time. And the more customers that came in, the more data verification that I had to do. It was definitely a low point from a passion point of view. But what I kept telling myself is, if I can prove out that this works, eventually I'm going to have crowd workers all over the world performing this data verification function for me. So in our business, when we started doing this process, when a customer submitted us a document, we guaranteed that we'd get them back results in 48 hours, which is basically how long it took me to take their document and key in all the data and submit it back from them. Where we are today is I have over 500 crowd workers across the world who perform data verification on an app that's kind of like Tinder for data. You swipe right if it's correct, swipe left if it needs to be edited, and they get paid per task for every task they accurately perform. We've parallelized the tasks and optimized the process so that the average documents are turned in about 15 minutes instead of 48 hours, which is where we were when you started. We also have a big element of machine learning where we essentially teach our systems to more effectively read the documents based on all of the verified information that's coming from the human's input. So that was kind of the vision that I saw in my head in 2015 when I'm sitting on Long Island keying in data at 8 p.m. on a Friday night. My friends are all out going to get a beer, and I'm saying to myself, why the hell am I doing this? But I kept my eye on the light at the end of the tunnel, persevered, and now I'll never verify another document for the rest of my life, and I'm super happy about it.
And was there, and with that I remember that was one part in the pitch. So in order, because it's a lot of financial information, in order to remove that personally identifiable information, it was like little CAPTCHAs. And I recall there was an operation in India, and we actually sent someone over, part of the due diligence to look at it. And they have this facility that was secured, and, managers that had great, professional experience. And it was a first-class operation. And to me, that's the difference between just having, some idea in your head and what it takes to really implement it and make it happen. But getting to that point about, finding your passion so you could have that persistence, was there a time after graduating that you weren't sure what you would do, or you just knew right afterwards you went straight into Acrolis?
So I was fortunate enough to have a father who's a serial entrepreneur. So since I was in diapers, I was kind of trained to think like an entrepreneur. I always knew it was something I wanted to do. I never had my sights on a corporate career path. But I needed to find the idea that I had the passion about. Quick story for us. The genesis story is, I'm sure everyone here has gone to a website and been asked to prove you're not a robot and type in these digits, right? It's called a CAPTCHA task. What the average person doesn't realize is when you're performing a CAPTCHA, you may actually be helping Google digitize millions of old books, menus, and magazines into searchable data. Google started a project where they wanted to use optical character recognition to read scanned images of millions of old texts. But they ran into accuracy problems. Different fonts, formats, document quality, they couldn't read every word accurately. So what they did was they snipped the words they couldn't read with a high degree of confidence and routed them to people like me and you to validate in CAPTCHA tasks. So you think that you're buying a ticket to a New York Giants game, proving you're not a robot, you're actually helping Google validate a 1930s New York Times article. The end result of this is 30 million plus books, menus, magazines are now searchable online with perfect accuracy. When I found out about this, I thought it was brilliant for a few different reasons. One, they created perfectly accurate searchable output. Two, they created a wealth of training data that they were able to use to teach their machines to more accurately read those abnormal fonts or formats or document qualities the second, third, fourth, fifth time. So that was the idea that resonated with me. And like many great ideas, I piggybacked on something that was already working and put it into another use case. So I said to myself, this is brilliant. We need to apply this same exact concept to financial services to automate financial document analysis instead of to automate, books, menus, and magazines. And that created the fire within me. I pitched it to a high school buddy of mine. He saw the vision. Again, fortunate enough to have my dad as a mentor and someone to help me, understand how to get the business off the ground. But, it's really just about finding something that you can go all in on, getting the validation, and then once you've done your diligence and you realize that it's a real idea, full boat. Like, that's your life, right? The big difference between entrepreneurship and corporate is most of my friends, they work 9 to 5, they look at their watch and they can't wait to get out of work at 5 o'clock so they can go, to the gym or go have drinks or whatever. For me, it's 24/7. This is my life. I'm all in. I do take breaks. That's important, to kind of have your own personal time on the side, but it's a 24/7 job, and it's really fueled by, the passion that we've been discussing.
So I knew the capture part. I didn't know that was the origin of the capture, because I thought that they would have to know what the answer is, so when you typed it, it matched, but that's not the case?
So they did two really cool things, which we have also copied. Firstly, they created redundancy in the system, so they routed the same task to a statistically significant number of individuals to ensure that the words were correct. Secondly, they introduced control tasks. So sometimes in a form box, you'll see two words. One's a snippet from an old magazine. The other's a control word that they know the answer key to, that they're using to evaluate whether or not you read the snippet correctly. So through a series of algorithmic checks, they were able to build essentially a self-sustaining ecosystem to ensure perfect accuracy. And we took that same concept and again, layered it into this financial statement use case.
Great, and I tell my class and nothing against Acrolis that it doesn't have to be the sexiest idea. There's nothing super sexy about optical character recognition, even at a very high degree of accuracy, but the ability to define a business model and to show how you'll execute it to get it done. And that's what I saw, when I went to the pitch and the due diligence. There's nothing, again, sexy about high degree, confidence, optical character recognition. But when you saw the business model and you saw the team of people executing, that's what convinced me.
It's the least sexy business in the world. No one wants to talk about document processing. If I go out and I'm in a bar and talking to a girl, I almost don't even want to tell her what I do because it's too boring. But a lot of the best businesses are super boring, and it's all about the execution, right? If you can prove to your customer, hey, I'm going to make this workflow cheaper, better, faster, smarter for you, and you can demonstrate on the back end that you have the unit economics to scale, some of the least sexy ideas are the best ideas.
Good. And Jenny, on that idea of, when you, find your passion going towards it and then you'll have the persistence. And I like what you said, what is my biggest fear and run towards it. While you were at, the consulting work, were you kind of waiting for where will that passion be? What will I do next? Or did you kind of have an idea of what you would do? And if you found it by accident, what was the story behind that?
I think my 3-year-old me was smarter than my 26-year-old me because I recently watched a video of mine where I was asked the question, oh, who do you want to be when you're older, blah, blah. And all my friends said, like a vet, a teacher, and I said a boss. Well, I kind of lost that ability because, I don't know, I was so focused on everyone is climbing the corporate ladder, that's what you do, blah, blah. So I was so conditioned to what society wanted me to do instead of looking into what I wanted to do. And for me, the key point was my dad died very suddenly when I was working at KPMG, and it made me realize, oh my God, he had so many dreams that he's not living. What am I doing here wasting my life when I know that this is not what I wanted? And instead of thinking and overcomplicating the process, I'm an extremely focused person. So I was like, okay, what can I do now? What am I already good at? And how can I start a business without needing 10 years in order to make money and travel the world and all the things I wanted to do? And so it was for me, it was an easy transition saying, oh, I love the actual task that I'm doing, the consulting and the work. I changed within KPMG working with entrepreneurs and startups and consulting them. And I was like, I really love that. I just don't like any of the conditions surrounding the work. So it's easy for me to say, oh, I love the actual work that I do. Take it and just make it my own. Be online, fully flexible in my schedules and all of that. So for me, it was really not trying to overcomplicate anything or trying to reinvent the wheel or coming up with a product or a company per se. But for me, it was really looking into what skills do I have? How can I market them online? How can I use them? Because I knew that for me, it was really relevant to very fast make money, to see that this is actually a profitable thing that I can do. And also for security reasons, because I was used to having a really good corporate salary, and I didn't want to go from up here to not making anything. So basically that was my train of thought, and I'm so grateful that I did it because within a very short amount of time I was able to make more money, work less, and
Good. No, and that idea of finding something that you're happy with, there's this story, it's misattributed to John Lennon, but the quote was, my mom always told me when I grow up I should be happy, and in elementary school, the teacher asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And instead of saying be a boss, he said, I want to be happy. And the story goes that the teacher said, no, you don't understand the question. And John Lennon says, no, you don't understand life. And it really is. It's a short ride. There's no second chance, no do-over. So find what you're happy with. You were studying entrepreneurship, graduated pace summa cum laude, as I did.
Yeah.
I was a few years before you. Having the entrepreneurship degree, was there a point that you wanted to do something on your own and took the consulting position? Were you a person kind of passionate or excited about consulting? Where do you see the next few years lining up, and what is the entrepreneurship angle in that?
Sure, yeah. So I think a lot of my classmates were actually surprised that I wasn't doing something entrepreneurial. But I had a lot of internships and just a background with startups, and I had worked with a variety of different startup businesses throughout my time at Pace. So I felt like I sort of had that experience. And in order to, I guess, because one of my future aspirations is to start my own business, but the thing is, I don't know what that business is yet. So I was like, I need exposure to kind of see where I want my path to lead sort of down the way. So when this consulting opportunity came up, I was like, this is a great way for me to kind of gain exposure to large clients, large commercial banks that I wouldn't be able to if I, let's say, started my own business or was working at a startup, and then be able to use that knowledge and apply it in my future endeavors after I've kind of sort of worked in the industry as well. And I think that even though I'm not necessarily in what would be deemed a traditional entrepreneurial career, what I'm doing now is sort of entrepreneurship, so entrepreneurship within a firm. So we're building more about what I do. So we build custom software solutions for clients. So each client's problem is different, and how we solve that problem also varies as well. So it's a different challenge every day. So even though it's kind of within the corporate structure, the challenges that my clients face and the problems and the solutions that we come up with are very different, and you actually have to use a lot of the entrepreneurial skills, building a team to create that product, being able to kind of market it to your existing clients. Also, how do you get people in the firm to pull from their projects to spend time on your project for a client that may not have even signed a deal yet? So there's a lot of complexities that I didn't go in thinking would happen, but I'm happy that they are there as well, because that's been fulfilling for me. And also, another thing about working at a corporate firm that I really enjoy is sort of the exposure to clients across the world. So most of the clients that I work with are in Europe. So doing business internationally is is a skill that I'm very thankful that I've been exposed to and can work with, because it's as we're sort of becoming a global economy and things are more tied, not just in your own country anymore. So you have to be able to do business across borders, and just sort of knowing like small customs or like way that people do business that's different than like American culture is something that I'm really grateful for, and that I only would have gotten exposure probably in this corporate environment with like this reach of clients and international experience doing business.
Well, thanks. And that idea that, entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship is much more than just starting a business. It really, as I said, I don't think anything's more synonymous with entrepreneurship than opportunity. And to me, it's that ability to recognize an opportunity, analyze an opportunity, and capture an opportunity. And what is the opportunity? You're able to solve a problem or provide a benefit that creates value. So whether you are, I hope that I'm an entrepreneurial professor, entrepreneur in government. I show in my slides, there was an interesting Wall Street Journal Help Wanted. The CIA is recruiting people, and in the Help Wanted it said, entrepreneurs. I was surprised to see. So that entrepreneurial thinking, I think, is going to be important no matter what you do. Just last question, and then we'll open it up to be right on schedule. I wanted to finish this at 7:15 and then take questions till about 7:30, and then have a little time to network both among yourselves and with the panel. But when I was working in the government, there was tons and tons of TLAs. Anyone know what a TLA is? A three-letter acronym. So one of the most common ones that you'd see when it came to like applications, jobs, and selecting people were KSAs, and that was knowledge, skills, and ability. So just as a closing question, we'll start with Sam and come back to Alexa. For students, in the audience, what do you think some of the most important knowledge, skills, and abilities that they should be thinking of developing for their career might be?
Technical skills. I personally am not a coder. In retrospect, if I understood what I do now, I would have either studied computer science in college or have taken additional courses to try to get at least a basic understanding. You don't have to be like an AI data scientist, but technical skills go a long way. Short of coding, it sounds intimidating on the surface level, but being well versed in Tableau, SQL, Excel, even, Excel is a super powerful tool, and a lot of people think they know how to use Excel. And then if you get in the room with a McKinsey consultant, you'll be like, holy shit, I know nothing about Excel. So I would recommend, outside of school, really digging in, perfecting those skills, highlighting those skills on your resume. And I think that goes a long way in different areas of the business. You'd be surprised, even in sales and marketing, how data-centric the world is today, and how you have to be, super analytical and really be able to dig into the data to understand what's going on both in the present day and how to project forward what you're going to use. So that's the biggest one for me, is a focus on technical skills. And again, even if you don't have it today, it can be learned. It's not something that, you have to learn when you're 5 years old. Everyone in this room is still young enough to, get up to a point where you have a leg up over the guy who's sending in a resume and, just writes that he's an English major.
Yeah. Good. Thanks, Jenny. Any thoughts, knowledge, skills, and abilities?
Coming from working with hundreds of entrepreneurs over the last months and years, what I feel like as an entrepreneur, the most important skills, definitely storytelling, being able to tell a compelling story, being able to use words that people are drawn to, and to, say something in simple words, but make sure to package it in a nice way. Selling goes hand in hand with storytelling, but I, for example, tell my clients that I want them to sell every single day, even though if it's just a small pitch to one individual person. I want them to get out there and be confident in selling, because selling is what makes you money in the end. And then also we have touched upon it a little bit, but mindset, like being really sure about what you can do and also what you can't do, and then getting better at the what you can't do, so that the confidence within you just grows and grows and grows. Because as an entrepreneur, there will always be ups and downs, there will always be haters. But if you're really strong, like as a personality and within yourself and your skill set, I think that's the strongest asset.
Yeah, and with the pitching of there's a philosophy, I think, therefore I am. In entrepreneurship, it's I pitch, therefore I am an entrepreneur. Alexis, thoughts on knowledge, skills, and abilities?
Sure. So I think just one thing that I've kind of found just in only working for a year and a half now is your ability to network is super important. And I don't mean like in the traditional sense. I'm saying network, and like these are my 2 tips on networking. So always remember their name. If you know their name, that's like such a golden ticket, because you never know when you're going to see them again. And it's always great when you remember their name, because then they think, oh, this person cares. This person saw value in something that I said, that they had to remember my name. So always remember someone's name, or try to. And then the second thing that I recommend with networking is don't talk about anything work related. Don't ask what they do. Ask where they're from, what they're interested in, what their hobbies are, because it's much easier to start a conversation about personal interests rather than what their latest project is at work. I do this even internally within the firm. I never say what department are you in, or what client are you working on. I'm always saying where have you traveled last? Because then when you see them again, you pick up that conversation of, how was your vacation in Florida? It's much more natural. And networking is about building relationships, and then using those relationships when an opportunity comes along. It's not about this person works in this department and I really want to work in that department, so I'm just going to talk to them about current projects they're on, and then I'll be able to email them in 6 months and be like, oh, you said about this project. So it's really about building a personal connection, and that's something that I focused on a lot, and I find that my network is much more valuable because of that. So really honing in on your networking skills. And it's not about what this person does or how they can help you in that moment. It's more of just building a connection with people that maybe might not be useful now, but in a year or 2 from now might be really useful for your network. And then second, I want to stress selling. I think there's no really dedicated class as far as selling something, but if you have good presentation skills, including PowerPoint skills, so how to appropriately lay out a PowerPoint slide and make it look appealing and have some graphic ability as well. If you can have those skills and you can sell something, that is I think something that will work at any job in any position, because you always have to sell your idea or sell your project or whatever you're working on to other people. So that's a skill that definitely everyone should focus on as well. And then also just the ability in the beginnings of your career, the ability to take feedback and learn from that quickly. So especially in the corporate world, it's like I always take notes whenever I'm in meetings because I don't want a senior manager or a partner to have to repeat themselves to me. So just the ability and willingness to learn and not make the same mistakes twice. Like you can make the mistake, but just not make it twice. And then always just taking notes. That's something that's kind of stuck with me and I think has made me successful just in the position that I'm in now.